It's kind of bright. Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another Father's Day movie month review. Continuing, we're going through the 1991's movie Father of the Bride, starring Steve Martin. Now, I watched this movie a tons of times growing up. I thoroughly love this film, and I'm a big fan of Steve Martin, and like him and Martin Short, make a great pairing every time they're in like a thing together. And if you see my uh, Valentine's Day slash Black History Month movie month review of Boomerang, and I mentioned how that kind of, because I watched that as a little kid, just like I did with this, and like there's like things in that kind of you know got to me as a little kid. It could kind of inform uh certain point of views I had since then up to this point. Father of the Bride is another thing. uh we'll get to it because it's not going to take too long, but I'll get to it. What affected me about this movie. But yeah, this movie stars Steve Martin as George Banks, Diane Keaton as Nina Banks, Kimberly Williams, if you recall her, if you ever watched the movie According to Jim, uh, this will be her breakout role that landed her that kind of spot in that TV series. She plays Annie Banks Mackenzie. Uh, Kieran Culkin, Macaulay Culkin's brother, Maddie Banks, playing as Maddie Banks. Uh, we got George Newborn and playing Brian McKenzie. Uh, uh, Martin Short as Frank Egelhofer, and B.D. Wong as Howard Weinstein. And so we begin the movie where George Banks is narrating uh, the events leading up to this big lavish wedding that was being held at his house. Everything's already died down, everybody already left, and he's recalling how, like, because this was his daughter's wedding, and how he's just looking back on not so long ago. He was like, you know, you know, uh, you know, giving you a certain perspective of how fathers are when it comes to their daughters, and how, or just children in general, just how like she, looked at you like, when there's a obviously clear relationship, special relationship a father would have with, their daughters, and like she looks at, like, a father will be the most important man in this young woman's life, uh above, like, pretty like neck and neck with, until at least neck and neck to whoever she marries in the future. But it's like he's the first man, that will set the tone of how she would view men going forward. Like, he's, a father should set the tone, like, set the bar on how, like, what kind of man she would uh need, expect to have later on in her life. So, she always telling him like, how much he's her hero. Her little hand used to fit in his. Like, he was everything to her. Then, he, this comedic stylism, Steve Martin here is like, then she's gonna start wondering. Then she gonna all of a sudden she gonna want you to drop her off a block away from the movie theater, and she starts wanting to get her ears pierced and wearing high heels. Then you're gonna start worrying about her meeting like the wrong guy, the kind of guys only want one thing, and you know what that thing is because the same thing you wanted when you were their age, and then eventually you'll stop worrying about her being like the wrong guy. Then eventually you're gonna start worrying about her being the right guy. Then you get into like the meat of the story, or at least the beginning of what led up to the wedding. Apparently, Annie was, studying abroad. She recently graduated college. She's studying abroad in Rome. She, went to college to be an architect, and uh, so she spent a few months in Rome. She's landed, back in California, where the family lives, and George, I don't even can't remember what. I'm pretty sure it's been said at least once what uh, Nina does for a living, because I'm blanking on it. But he runs a shoe company called Sidekicks. I'm pretty sure it was original back in the early '90s, but it's like, okay. But even still, you should see like the house, like you got a freaking not a mansion, but it's like, my God. I was like, how much is like a shoe salesman? Not shoe salesman, but it's like, you know, maybe it's like, prices were different back in like the '80s, early '90s. So him working a job like that could probably, cause the guy is clearly, like, if you see the movie, you can tell like how finicky he is when it comes to money. So, depending on how much he's saving, and like micromanage the money, back in those days, maybe it was feasible for him to afford a lavish house like that in California, mind you. Uh, but it was like daunting to me. It's like, God, it's just like with Al Bundy, him being a shoe salesman at like a discount Foot Locker, and still be able to afford a house like he has in Married with Children, which is like bonkers to me. Even in the '90s, it shouldn't even be feasible. Uh, it's even worse with Al Bundy because he got a wife that's like a stay-at-home mom that I don't even know if she even does any stay-at-home mom kind of stuff. So that is even worse, but it's still like weird how you can like afford something this huge. He only has like a wife, daughter, and a son, and you, 4 people, in a house that can look like it can fit like 10. Or it's just not that dissimilar to like the father, or at least like the parents of Home Alone, in like, it's supposed to be in like Chicago, but they, whatever. It's like certain shots wasn't filmed in Chicago, but whatever. But the house is in like a suburban area in Illinois. I haven't seen it personally myself. Maybe at some point I want to take a trip to go actually see the actual house from Home Alone. But everybody's curious about what that guy does for a living to afford a house like that. Now, I'm pretty sure I mentioned that in my Home Alone spoiler review around last year for the Christmas movie month review. So you can check that out on the channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. But it's just like, it's weird in certain movies. You wonder how they can afford something like that, even in the '90s. How things used to cost back then. It's weird. Anyway, he's freaking out, like like he seems like one of those like anxious types. It's like and he's getting notified her plane landing, and she had this like big surprise. And so he gets home, and like and they having dinner, and like he's going off about like, oh, going to see Paul Simon and doing all this other stuff, and like but then she dropped the bomb on them Breaking them the good news that I met a guy in Rome named Brian. You know, we were dating a few months. Then he proposed to me. I said yes, and you know, we're getting married. And like, I never agreed with a character more so than anyone in a film before than I do with George Banks, because his reaction. Because even when I was a little kid, now keep in mind, I wasn't even a teenager yet. Uh, I was still like, you know, like 7, 6, 7, 8 when I first saw this movie uh, as a little kid, and it's like, because I remember, I think I was watching it the first time I saw it was with it was even my father and my grandfather, and like I'm pretty sure it was my grandfather, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me, because like you know, even I knew as like a 7 or 8 year old, I knew it was like that didn't compute in my mind. It's like you only knew a guy for 3 months and you already want to get married to a guy. That, that and then uh and his reaction is should be the correct reaction. It's like like you're not getting married. You only and like he's like a computer something or other consultant, and uh even though it doesn't sound like it's all technical titles, but it doesn't sound like a job, but it is a job. But irregardless of that, her just jumping the gun like that, like the way like the parents are, I do not believe this girl would, you know, jump on. She should be more practical, given her parentage. She should have come across more practical than that, than just like, oh, we're in love, and after 3 months, like I just know, and it's like, he's like, no, you're not getting married, and that's it, and that's final. And it's like, yes, that is the appropriate response. I highly agree, and it's very, very rare. I won't say very rare. There's only like a handful of times when parents act like legitimate parents in a movie, and not cliche one way or the other, but that is like a legit response. I would be just like that, and she storms off in a huff. The daughter storms off in a huff, and then the wife, telling Joyce like, would you go like apologize before she goes off and marry this kid, and we never see her again? And if I was in my mind, I'm like, well, deuces, because I'm not like condoning this. Why would you condone this? And it's like, shame on Nina. Why would you condone this? You all in your feelings about this, like, oh my god, my daughter's getting married. Oh, it's like a fairy tale dream. Like, fuck that. No. This is where it comes when I mentioned earlier about how like it kind of got into my head as a little kid, where it's like this movie. It's because of this movie. And I know how like wrong it might sound, but it's because of this movie. Puts in my mind is like I would not have no daughter, because I'd be damned if she comes home one day and tell me like, oh, I know a guy for like 3 months that we haven't definitely never met before, and like saying like, oh, we're getting married, and it's like, no. As I mentioned to many friends, because there's a few couples that are that I know that are married and stuff like that, or just in long-term relationships, and I mentioned to them the bare minimum that a person will get married to another person, at least the point where you should expect like a proposal is 2 years. And that's my personal opinion, because like at least you meet a person because a guy would know. I know some guys are scumbags, and you know they, you know, they need, if they like it, put a ring on it. That's why, like, recently Michael B. Jordan, Lori Harvey broke up with Michael B. Jordan because he wants to get serious, and she's in her 20s, so she has to, you know, uh, she's still in her 20s, so she's not in that mindset yet. And see, that's another thing. Like, okay, you guys, you know, ladies, okay, you can't have it both ways. I know this is not all women, but it's like you can't have it both ways. Okay, for the longest time you're talking about like, oh, it's so hard to find a man to commit, and like, is a good guy and does this and got that. And Michael B. Jordan has, a very successful career. He's sexiest man alive. A couple years back. Uh, you know, uh, he's like, very healthy, well put together. Uh, his, success is, just continuing to rise. It's like, what else? He clearly can take care of himself easily. Got security, very smart guy, funny. And it's like, you're not. It's like, you should be like a dog with a bone and not letting that guy go. I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40, or 50. You got a guy like that, you hold on to that and you do not let go. Especially if he's into you as much as he has. This ain't no summer fling or winter fling or whatever like that. This is like a good guy. And if the roles were reversed, women be all like, yeah, well, he ain't shit anyway, kind of thing. And it's like, it just boggles the mind. It's like, that's why women seems like so much like puzzles half the time. And he's sitting there like, I will never, support, like, if I had a daughter like Annie, I will never support this fiasco she put herself in. And I don't care about meeting the guy. If you meet him, you'll know, like, why he's such a great guy. I don't care. He can be like the Buddha for all I care. But it's like, there's no way you're marrying a guy that you only met for a few months. Like, when you enter a relationship, like, it's like at least within like a year, you get to know each other. Your, like, quirks and mannerisms, things you don't like, the things you do like. Like, you're not even in that position where you're comfortable with farting around each other, or like, it's like, I remember like my ex a long time ago. She like got very comfortable with like telling me, like, I'm on the phone with her, and all of a sudden, like, oh, I'm just in the bathroom taking a shit. Like, okay, it's like we're at that point where you just feel that comfortable just telling me that stuff. I was like, didn't really know that, but thank you for the info. But it's just like, there's a progress, and they skipping over like a massive progress, and like, this the year of getting comfortable around each other, and like, yeah, we ain't gotten into like an argument, and it's like, I know it's like you shouldn't fight all the time, but you're going to have disagreements, just like any individual you ever come across. You're going to have a anybody you with for an extended period of time, you're going to have disagreements. It's inevitable. And it's like, you're in that lovey-dovey phase. Like, that's where, and you haven't even moved in with each other yet. That's another thing. I was like, okay, you're in like a rock solid relationship for a year. Maybe next year, or at least the next like half of the next year, you could be considering moving in with each other, and getting used to being, because like y'all live in separate houses, but he's spending the night over your place, or you spending over his place, and back and forth. You already got a drawer of your own little amenities over his place, so you can have something like some stored away stuff in case you're sleeping over. But eventually you have like come to a conclusion where you want to move in with each other, so that way you have your own living space, that you share. Then you, because some women don't think like, like guys won't commit. Guys would know, if he has a good head on his shoulders and raised right, he would know. And I told my friend this, my friend Anita this when I visit. No, it wasn't when I visit, but it's just one of the time when I spoke with her through like voice chat when we were streaming, playing games, and it's like a guy would know, like within a bare minimum, like in a 2 year period of binging, it's like this is a girl like I want to like marry. He would know by that point, and like years ago, like at least 2017, I went to this party, and like I danced with this chick, and we was vibing with each other, but like she was, well, her friend said they were engaged, but the guy never popped the question. She only saw the ring, but he never popped the question. Like she snuck and found the ring, but he haven't actually produced it yet. But they've been together for like 5 years at that point. He still haven't asked, even though they live together. And it's like, okay, that's way too long. Okay, if it's gone past into the 4th year or more, he's never going to ask. Okay, and from what I've been told, they both have a good job, so it's like it's not like they're, he's or he or she wasn't like financially secure with them each other, but it's just like, okay, what's the hold up? Okay, that's what I'm saying. Like this 2 year minimum, 3 at the most. You should be popping that question, especially if you're living together. For like over a year of living together, where you gotten so used to each other, and it's just, I understand George Banks. It is like, like, and this is where like I do not like Nina in this. It's her. She doesn't seem practical. She seems all swept up in like the loviness about it, and it's like, okay, it's cute, sure. Put that to the side and look at it from like, uh, the, face value of it. Does, or at least the nitty gritty of it, I should say. Does this seem logical for people who haven't spent enough time with each other for more than a year to be jumping to the point of marriage? Leave a comment below. Let me know what y'all think, because like my set of standards might be different from yours, but I'm pretty sure we all should be in agreement that 3 months isn't long enough for people to understand if you're right for each other for marriage. Because no matter what decade, that's idiotic. But anyway, they, George go out and apologizes, but he still doesn't think it's like a good idea. But he's not gonna like drive off his own daughter. So Brian swings by, and like he, tells the Banks about himself, all the while him just like rubbing up against, like, putting his hand on his on Annie's like thighs and knees, and like George got the same expression I would probably make. That's why I don't have daughters. Like, it's all fun and games at first until she gets older enough and start like get into those kind of like feelings and stuff like that, for like the when she come of age to feeling those feelings. And it's like, God, no. And I'll be throwing like a pillow at the both of them, like, get your hands on my freaking daughter in front of me. I don't care, like, y'all might have done whatever over Rome, like, I can accept that, but like not in front of me. You keep like Jesus in between you two, like. But he goes off, well, he's going off about like what his job entails in detail, which I'm glad he explained, because on the surface area, by the title, it doesn't seem like, it seems like a long, complicated job title. Just says you're a computer consultant, let it be that. But all the while he's just while he's talking, she's like all snuggling up against him, like it's like, are you in heat? Calm the hell down. You know, like your parents are literally right there, and you seem very comfortable. You know, like you're in some kind of like brothel or something. Jeez. Uh, uh, of course, later on that night after the daughter decides to show him around town, uh, the Banks parents are having like a discussion, and she is like overwhelmed with how, like, oh, this is like a wonderful occasion, we should be happy, and it's like, I don't want to discount her feelings, because certain women like are more in tune with emotions than most others, but it's like, God, it seems like not like none of this seems like a good idea. Uh, Now, I'm not against like these two. Like, okay, they met each other, they're vibing. Sure, they can be boyfriend and girlfriend. You know, That's cool. But it's like there's no, even if, at least personally, even if this girl was Wonder Woman, I would not jump the gun and after 3 months and say I want to marry this person. I mean, like, give it more than a year before like go down that route. At the most, I should be thinking about like like getting while the getting is good with this girl, and like getting to know her and dates and just having fun, doing stuff with each other and enjoying each other's company before like I go down marriage. Marriage shouldn't be like the first thing out the gate you should be thinking about. And then there was a line they going off about a story like, oh, we went to this movie thing and we all laughing at the same parts, and you have a very brave daughter. Shut the fuck up. Like, shut up, both of you. Like, both of you are idiots. You're stupid kids. You're in your 20s. Like, I think Annie was like 22. As it mentioned, this it's so idiotic. It's so idiotic. Please tell me I'm not the only one who thinks this is idiotic. I'm sorry. I love this movie, but it gets me, I get frustrated with his stupid daughter and the wife and everybody involved, except like the son and George. Like, these are the only two people that I actually like that got any kind of sense in this. But then uh, the Banks go the next day meet Brian's parents, who happened to be able to meet Annie and get to know her while they was out taking a trip, taking like a business trip in Rome, and meeting Brian and getting to know uh, Annie. I was like, oh well, good for you. But they live in, I don't know what the heck they do, but they live in Bel Air, and it's like, oh God, the 1% shit. Uh, and the dad seems like a cringy goofball, and it's like he's more emotional than the women in this film. It's like, what you think about the news, George? He's pointing like a guy's on. What you think about the news, George? Like, I was terrified, but you know, whether we like it or not, they have age, and we gotta hope we raise them right. So who are we to say? And like, you hear like George narrates, and it's like, who are we to say? We're only their parents. And it's like, yes, exactly. Just telling that this dude want to get all emotional where he's raising like a toast, and it's like, shut up, you bald bastard. You don't know jack shit. I don't know, like, what kind of guy you raised. He seems like decent, but it's like, you should be just as like concerned and like putting this whole wedding business on hold for at least a year, at the very least a year, because these two have not been in the same. You put two people, two people might get along, put them in a room together, uh, have them live together for a year, and see if they can get used to each other before something blows up. Because you haven't gone through any trials and tribulations of a relationship to form an opinion whether you in it for the long haul. But not saying all the way he said isn't sound, because you do hope that you raise your children the right way to make certain decisions, and you can't micromanage them, of course, but you should be there to catch them if they fall. You should just still be there if they need you, but you can't micromanage every bit of their life. That isn't the way to go either. But honestly, I wouldn't want to hear that, because this whole entire thing is stupid. I don't give a damn what my wife says, what these parents say. It's nip it all in the butt. Screw all that. If she goes off and decides to, hey, I'm eloping or whatever like that, fine, deuces. You want to make this decision. I'm not supporting this because it's so idiotic. And mind you, there will come a day when you have a big blow up fight, which they do in later on in later scenes in this film. It's not. It should be apparent that you shouldn't be getting married yet. But anyway, George, sneaks around the house and finds their checkbook, and he's realizing we never see how much they make, but clearly they live in Bel Air. They make probably a lot. I'm not sure what they do for work, but he ends up trying to avoid the Mackenzie's Dobermans, and he ends up falling to their pool with the Mackenzie's none the wiser. So George eases up a bit, of course, and decide okay, we'll come up with an arrangement for where we hold the reception, and Annie wants to have the reception, a home reception, and you see a little dream, daydream, excuse me. George has this very hokey, cookie cutter 1950s backyard barbecue of a reception with a guy playing the accordion, folksy music off the accordion, and because this is only after he suggested some barbecue place called the Steak Pit, and it's even if I was on board with this whole fiasco, I'm not gonna have it at the Steak Pit. I mean, I'm kind of like George in a way, because I can be frugal with my money, if I want to be, and it's as much as I want to save money, but I'm not gonna give my kid no rinky-dink kind of reception, because that seems kind of it seems kind of effed up, because this is kind of something they will remember for the rest of their lives, and it's you gotta at least make it somewhat enjoyable and memorable. I'm not gonna spend $1,000 on a Ritz, but it's I'm not gonna give them some backyard barbecue bullshit. Of course, George and Annie's, usually have back and forth about this entire thing. It seems because Nina knowing George as long as she has, and this relationship seems like a legit relationship, because they you hear certain tidbits of the history that Nina was a year younger than Annie was when these two, when her and George got married. Later on in the film, you hear Nina. Oh no, no, it was in the next film, when, the sequel to this, when you hear the story about how their first date went. He was, was so into her, but like he showed up an hour late to their first date because he was standing outside the restaurant looking at her, and he was too nervous to go in there because like she looks so beautiful, and it's like I don't want to look like a fool. And right before she was about to like drive away, she almost hit him with her car, but it just kind of thing was like, okay, it's kind of like a not meet cute, but it's like a just like a cute first date kind of story. But and then like in this film earlier in the scene, after meeting Brian, uh George points out like how he's not keeping his hands off their daughter, and she points out, you want me to list all the places where you and me had done it in my parents' house. And it's like, yeah, sure, George is being a hypocrite. I'm not denying any of that. I mean, we all probably have hypocritical moments in our lives when it comes to what we won't allow our kids to do, what we have done at their age, kind of thing. But there's got to be like a middle ground here. Uh, so they go to meet Martin Short's character, uh, Franck, who's like this over the top French, thick accented uh, wedding planner. And it's like him and BD Wong like really went for it with these accents. They like thicked it up. I I didn't know it was like BD Wong was going for an accent because he got like a very Jewish last name, even though he's Asian, and it's like he sounds like he has like a stuffy nose that he hasn't cleared up yet. No, no, Uh, I I'm like Frank. I'm Frank's assistant, Howard Weinstein. And it's like wow, that nasally voice. Uh, but then and then like the way like Martin Short's character is like pronounces certain things like cock. It's like also juice. I gotta find a cock first. We'll find a cock first, and then we'll know. Then we'll know how the whole entire wedding will come to produce to be produced. So we got the cock first. It's like, well, talk a second. It's like I like Martin Short character. He's just like the right kind of over the top in his roles. Even in like the Santa Claus 3, not a good movie, but by God, I love Martin Short. He's so dang funny. And like Chevy Chase clearly has issues, but the Three Amigos are just so good. And it's just like I need to rewatch. It's been years. I haven't watched Three Amigos since I was maybe my I think the last time I was like early teens. I think the last time I saw Three Amigos on TV. I really want. It's like that and City Slickers. Like, leave a comment below. It's like City Slickers and Three Amigos. Which one do you like more? Because I think they both had like two movies apiece with each other. I don't know about Three Amigos. I can't recall if Three Amigos had like a let me see, because I don't think Three Amigos had a sequel. No, Three Amigos didn't have a sequel. Oh, that's a shame. Uh, but that was pretty funny too. At some point, I want to rewatch Three Amigos. That is like a great. At least maybe I'm going off nostalgia because I haven't seen it since so many years. Maybe just off simple nostalgia, but that and like City Slickers, I recall just enjoying the hell out of both of those. But anyway, they looking at the brochure with like all these different cakes, and Frank suggested this cake there's like not $1,200, but it's like $1,200. It's 1,200. I got that right the first time, but um, and George points out how pricey it is, and it is freaking pricey, even for the '90s. It's I'm pretty sure by today's standards it'll be like close to 3,000. I imagine, given like inflation over through the years, but it's like, and it's like a big. I mean, I don't know how, like, 'cause I never got married. I never been married before. I've been to weddings, but it's just like this monstrosity of a cake, and it's like a cake doesn't need to be that effing big, and like they looking at Annie. It's like and she's like, don't look at me, y'all do it. No, this is your wedding too. You make some decisions, lady. You want to get married so bad, you find a cake that's under $1,000 at least. God, $1,200. It's like mind numbing. It's like what, like 5 to 6 layers. That's like, and then like it goes off the later on he finds out about like because you got Brian's family, and then like the Banks family come to this thing. And side note, we see glimpses of like at least a few of like the Mackenzie's extended family, but we didn't got like you just by the face and like, oh, this is cousin blah blah blah, and introducing George to them. And it's like you blink and miss it. It's not they're not really that important, but it's like, where's Brian and Annie's close friends? I imagine they should have some close friends. We never seen them. Like what do they do outside of, because the only time we see them is with these family, the parents. And it's like, okay, do you get a life outside of their familial background? It's like, okay, where's where's Brian's closest bud, and this supposed to be like the best man kind of thing. Because clearly they gotta have like a bachelorette and bachelor party. You should see like having some kind of close friends to do that kind of thing with. They seem kind of rust all that. But I was about to say, they're going over like the pricing, because George found out it's like $250 a head, and just with Nina, George, Annie, and Maddie by themselves is already $1,000. So, and they already got, like, as he initially said, like nearly 500 people coming to this thing. At least close to it. So he was like, okay, we're gonna have to trim the fat on a lot of these people, because there's no way, because George is like, he doesn't want to, he kind of gets insecure about comparing himself to like Brian's family, who seems to be like richer than God somehow, but he doesn't want to appear like he can't like afford his own daughter's wedding. But it's like yeah, you're gonna trim the fat on this if you inviting all these doggone people, and then Brian brings his extended family from Denmark, all the way over here. It's like his, whatever, second cousin twice removed to this doggone thing. It's like, no. We're gonna go to this, list of people, and we're gonna say like, nope, like, and it's like there's one funny moment that kind of cracks me up every time, and it's like, George mentions a guy, and Maddie points out like, didn't that guy die? Oh yes, perfect. and like everybody looking at him all shocked, like, oh my, oh sorry. And it cracks you up every time, like, without missing to be like, yes, like, because that'll be my reaction too. Like, I am George Banks in this one. Like just like right on point. is my like behavior throughout this, like how I would probably would react. As like, even though it's like not culture, obviously I wouldn't like be overjoyed with somebody dying, but it's like, okay, one name down, don't have to worry about it. Okay, like like you haven't seen like a guy in like you claim to be his best friend, but you haven't seen him like a good 20 years. It's like, okay, don't need to invite him. Yeah, not that person, not that person. And then like Maddie pointed out, like, can I invite my best friend if he promises not to eat? No, that's a good idea. Who else can we ask not to eat? My parents, your mother. And then Annie, had like a outburst and like, why don't we charge people that we can make money off the wedding? And then she storms off. Like, oh, now you have an opinion. You didn't say anything about the freaking cake like I suggested. But it's like, later on that night he sees like, Annie, fall asleep with like, with a book, basically like how to have like a good wedding on like a budget. And it's like the list that they, George reads off. It's like, actually those, at least half of those are pretty good doggone suggestions. We could at least do them. But it's like, he doesn't want to like, obviously want to hurt his daughter, because like him like bitching about like the finance of the entire wedding. But it's like, it's sound. I was like, okay, yeah, because like I said, only Maddie and George is the only likable people I out of this entire film for me, even though I do enjoy this film as a whole. But it's just like, guys, nearly 500 people, 250 a head. Do the math. And like, unless you want to sell your stuff, we're going to trim the fat on this. Okay? Especially because, Brian and Annie goes to Hawaii for their honeymoon. It's like, okay, like how much that's going to cost? I mean, come on. Not, and this is not factoring the gifts people will give, now that I'm thinking about it. And when it comes to my wedding, in lieu of certain gifts, I would, have people like putting like, putting like a little piece of money in like a pot to afford to, so that way me and my future wife could afford to go to Hawaii for like a week or something like that. Because I know it's cliche, but it's like I kind of want to do Hawaii for a honeymoon. It seems like a good like a honeymoon kind of place. I mean, like, because that is like a bucket list place I want to go. Next, George is okay, he's saying, I'm gonna zip my lip, I'm gonna like suck it up and just like go like I am all for a wedding. So he puts on like a very old tux. It's not even black as navy, but it kind of looks black. But he can't fit it anymore. But everybody's doing Frank and Howard's doing like ordering around the renovations in like the house, so they can have this big kind of like reception at the house to make room for so many people. And then like you mean these caterers and like and like things getting torn up, and like Frank ordering swans. It's like, what you need swans for? It's like, that's way too much. It's just like with my review for Bad Moms 2 that I did for Mother's Day last month, for Mother's Day movie month review. Bad Moms 2, one of the moms sitting there, going out her way to like, decorate the entire house for Christmas and ordering turtle doves to fly out this box once like the outside stuff is going through all like the 12 days of Christmas. And it's like, why? You don't need that. It's like, because that's a like a expense that doesn't need to be tacked on to the price tag. I was like, I'm pretty sure the swans and then the upkeep of the swans and feeding them for the day of use, it's pretty pricey on its own merit. Like, no, we don't need swans. You don't need to like. It's not, a freaking. You won't. The bride to be should have like a fairy tale kind of wedding. You don't need to be legit, like literally a fairy tale wedding. You don't need swans. Take the swans out. But Joris has a meltdown. He drives out to the nearest grocery store, have like a meltdown in the store, at this have like a pretty much like a Karen moment, to be frank with you, but to be frank with you, he has like a Karen moment before it was popular, whereas about which as a little kid I kind of agree. It wasn't, if it wasn't for Steve Martin pointing this out, I never would have consider it about like because it's gotta be like something going on with the bun company and like the hot dog wiener company. They in cahoots or something like that, because it doesn't make any sense. Well, there's not an even number of hot dog buns to the hot dog wieners, because you got 8 wieners in one pack, and you got 12 hot dog buns in one pack. It doesn't match well. You have like he's taking the superfluous buns out of the bread packages, and because he does it, he has to pay for it now. But it's like, I'm not paying another goddamn thing. And this caused him to get locked up. And Nina has to come bail him out. And she lectures him, saying like, I'll let you out, but you have to promise that you're not rolling your eyes or like undoing your collar or making a big huff, about like how much it's costing me, and like every time you do that, you're taking a piece of your daughter's happiness. F all that, okay? I mean, not F like my daughter's feelings, but it's like it costs a lot, and nobody seems to be worried about that. Like, because of course none of y'all worry about it because y'all not the ones paying for all this. And of course, like, I'm not going. I mean, George do need to get some blame on that, because like you don't have to do that. You just want to make sure you don't look like you're poor compared to Brian's parents. But I nearly forgot about like their first big argument, and it's honestly almost like a stupid thing, to be frank with you. But it's one of those things where it's like, that's why you got to like have like a significant time of being around each other, living together, before, and getting used to each other before you make this kind of big decision. Because any little thing could like disrupt the entire marriage altogether. Because you just as quickly as you jumping into being proposed to and married, you can easily just as quickly get divorced over a couple of blow-ups. That's probably minor stuff. But Annie comes to a parent's house in tears because Brian gives her like a gift, like some blender, and he's thinking that he wants her to be like a stay-at-home mom, like what's supposed to. Now keep in mind, this is like the 90s, where it's like, I think this is where like the turning point when, as far as like feminism and like understanding about like certain roles that we're trying to like, roles and traditions that we're trying to break, because that's like like not like supporting women in the workforce and equal rights, and there's always been a thing, but it's like, I think in like the late 80s, early 90s, when it's like you see that shift into into the direction that we are now. It could be a whole lot better, considering the whole like Roe v. Wade thing we got to deal with and everything like that. You think we took a turning point, but two steps forward, one step back kind of thing. But it's just like she is upset. She assumes that he's like thinking like she expects him to be like a at home cooking kind of thing, and and then she tells George about Brian, because they had like an argument, and Brian says like she thinks it's an accusation about like Brian had like a discussion with his parents about like suspecting George going through Brian's parents' financial book and threw it in like a pool and stuff like that, and she obviously thought it was ridiculous. But then Brian trying to come see Annie, but she doesn't want to see him. George decides to take him out for a drink, for a man talk. But he initially thought he can use this opportunity to obviously like, okay, I can get rid of this kid for good. But then he's like, after spending time with him, he understood that this is he's actually is a pretty decent kid, and he come to a conclusion where it's like, because after having a talk with him and regaling Brian, is like, Annie comes from a long line of overreactors, like me, my mother, my grandfather. So he's like, your kids could be normal, because it goes progressively less as the generations go on. But and then he comes to the conclusion like, okay, Brian's just like Nina and Annie's just like me, so they are a perfect fit for each other. So, and then George comes clean to Annie's like, all the stuff he said about the whole financial book and stuff like that. Yeah, I did it. So they reconcile. The wedding goes on, and this is where it kind of bothers me. It bothers me a bit because the whole time while George trying to see Annie, while like after like the whole wedding part and is doing the reception, you never get to see like, okay, because they kind of skip the whole entire father and daughter dance. That's weird, because all the while he's trying to like see his daughter, trying to catch her while and Brian's taking pictures, wedding pictures, and like throwing the bouquet and like but it's like he's dealing with all this other stuff that like he shouldn't have to be really that worried about, honestly, because like Frank's supposed to be the wedding planner. He should be controlling about like all the cars that's out in front of the building, and like the police is like like telling them you got 30 minutes to get all this stuff off the out of the street, because it's like clearly other people is trying to like drive by and park, because there's other houses in the neighborhood. But then it's like Frank gotta rush in because that's bringing out the cake. Okay, do you think the dad want to see this stuff? Why you why you gotta? Because they have like supposedly 4 drivers parking these cars, but 2 of them got sick, so they only got 2 to deal with this stuff. Clearly not enough. But it's like George had a bright idea to like, okay, my son and his best friend for like 9 or 10ish, but I need help and it's not that far. So he had the boys working in teams for each car to like safely park these cars onto the banks of parking on their grass, essentially, just to make some room so they won't get in trouble. But when it's all said and done, George missed like the bulk of the important stuff in his wedding, and I'm surprised that nobody, even though Nina's like wondering like what happened to like the dad. It's like, go talk with Frank, or at least have like Wally and Frank go over to like Nina is like whisper like, George is out front, or at least find somebody who's not the critical part of the entire wedding. The parents of both bride and groom need to be present for all these festivities. Uh, Anybody like the extended stuff don't really need be a part of this. It's like, I don't know, somebody not in the immediate family, like, like at least there's not much of a wedding planner if he didn't like account for, extra, calling people for extra help in case of emergencies when it comes to corralling cars. Especially if you have 500 people. I don't even think four, drivers would have cut it anyway. You should have at least six to at least compensate. Okay, like 6, 7 be more enough to like, okay, corral at least a significant amount of these cars. Those who probably didn't take a taxi or share a ride. But the way it went on, the bride and groom went off to the airport to go off on their honeymoon, but she managed to get on the payphone and call her father to like tell him that she loves him and like thank him for everything he's done. Because these two clearly are like this. It's like the relationship between father and daughter is like very tight knit. Not to say like father and sons aren't like that, but it's just like it's like a different level of bond. Like there's two different kind of bonds when it comes to that. But this is where you get the end of the film where Nina and George have their own like nice little slow dance in the empty house, and the movie ends. Despite my criticisms, I still enjoy this film. It's a nice little feel good kind of movie. A decent, just like with Multiplicity, it's a pretty good feel good 90s film. Still highly recommend it, as well as the sequel, which I'll get to in a few minutes after this video. But yeah, I agree with George. It's like most of his concerns are legitimate. It's so dumb. And the whole blow up with that blender thing, could just been that minor thing. But she, made like a huge thing. And it's like, now you worry about like canceling the wedding. It's like, you wouldn't have to worry about all that stuff. And, it's just like, if things would have progressed like a normal relationship should, that little blow up with the blender would have ended it after like a few days, depending on how mad she, or overacting she is. It all would have blown over, and they could have gone through their little motions. Okay, it's like that first argument. I'm so sorry, and woo woo. And it's like that, it's kind of like a workout. It's like put some stress on the muscle, then it gets stronger after it relaxes. That kind of thing. So it just I really don't like. I think I dislike Nina and Annie more often than anybody else. Because I still get some enjoyment out of Frank and Howard. But like, George and Maddie is my favorite because they seem like the most sensible ones. But like Nina and Annie, it seems like just, despite how, in their feelings and like, lovey-dovey this all seems, they completely ignore the practicality of the entire situation. With the pricing, the rushing of marriage, and barely even get the time to get the, because I got a lot of female cousins, and most of them are married, and they, clearly had, when they get into relationships, they lived together before they eventually got married to, their husbands, and it's like, I'm pretty sure they got into their fair share of arguments before they got married, and like all this other stuff. Relationship takes work, and it's like you don't want to rush into anything. It's just like it's mind-boggling to me. This is why like I'm hesitant on. It's 50-50 shot of me getting like a son, but it's just like I got contingency plans in case I end up getting a daughter, because I have refused to go through that same BS George went through, because it's like doesn't make any sense, and like, I will fight tooth and nail, stand my ground. I don't care, because hopefully my future wife wouldn't, behave like Nina behaves in this film. Hopefully she'll be more, practical about the situation, and beyond that, hopefully I raise my kid to understand, like, you do not rush into any relationship without letting it. It's like trying to rush a plant to grow. It's like, you gotta plant the seed, water it, sunlight, all that other stuff. Keeping, like, all these, like, pests from it and that kind of thing, so it can flourish. You're skipping over the process. But anyway, let me know what you guys think of Father of the Bride Part 1. And I will see you guys in a few minutes as I cover the sequel. And yeah. And I know Summer Games Fest went off today. I really want to see this again because I have some thoughts, but it's like I need to make I need another look at it to make a firm decision on my thoughts. So I probably won't post anything until maybe like tomorrow evening. But I'll see you guys soon. Take care and be well.